guys, Taylor Benson here to talk more about Rocksmith 2014. Now, before we start, let's go over how Rocksmith works. It works by taking the audio signal output from your guitar and running it through the real tone cable into the game where it's processed and the notes are detected. But in order for this to work the best, two things need to happen first. Number one, your guitar needs to be calibrated properly. And number two, your guitar needs to be in tune.
Let's move on.
As we explain in-game, it's very important that you have your guitar's volume all the way up before you start calibration. When we're calibrating, what we're trying to determine is the highest volume your guitar can output as well as the lowest, so that we know when you're actively trying to play as opposed to when you aren't.
Now, go ahead and tune.
Making sure your guitar is in tune is just as important as making sure it's calibrated properly. Without proper tuning, even if you're playing the correct string on the correct fret, we won't know that you're playing the correct note because your guitar is outputting at a different pitch. When you tune, there are a couple important things to remember. One, make sure you're plucking the right string. Two, make sure when you're turning a peg, you're turning the peg that corresponds to the string you're plucking. It gets very dangerous if you're turning the wrong peg while you're plucking a separate string. This means you can be turning the peg and not noticing a change in pitch, which may cause you to turn the peg further. Turning a peg on a string you're not playing too far can result in strings breaking, and nobody likes that. It's important to make sure that no other strings are still ringing when you attempt to tune any given string. If you have another string ringing while you're trying to tune, say, the yellow A string, it's going to throw off the sound coming out of your guitar and probably cause you to get false results within the tuner. So, starting with the low E string, which is the red string, plucking that, you can see I'm a bit sharp, or the number next to the tuning needle is plus, it's positive. So what I'm going to do is tune down to under the string and then tune back up. What this does is help you get in tune more efficiently and also helps keep you in tune the longer you play. Another technique you can try is repeatedly plucking the string when you're attempting to tune. So for the A string here, I'll pluck maybe once every half a second to a second to make sure that the pitch output that's coming out from my guitar is consistent. Because as you can see here on the blue string, or the D string, when you pluck it, it jumps up and then settles back down, because that's the dynamic of what's happening with the string. This is especially true with the high E string, which notoriously produces a kind of low level of sound output from your guitar. And this is basically true with every guitar. You'll notice if I pluck the high E string one time, it'll start to fill up the tuning circle and then drop back out. And that's because the sound coming out of this tiny little string at the bottom of the guitar isn't strong enough to sustain the level of detection we need to make sure you're properly in tune. So again, as I mentioned before, it's wise to continuously pluck the string to make sure that you're actually in tune. And then passing the tuner should be no problem. Now, it's important to keep in mind that every time you make a big tuning change on your instrument, even if it's just to one string, you're going to alter the tension for all the strings on your guitar. That's why when you're tuning down to E standard and you're reducing the tension on the strings, we start with the high E, as you can see here. When you need to reduce the tuning, you're removing tension from the strings, and we want to make sure you remove the tension from the high E, which is the weakest one, first. Otherwise, you run the risk of a string snapping because the high E ends up taking all the pressure from the reduced tunings on the top strings. As I mentioned before, whenever you make a big tuning change to your instrument, like the one I'm about to do, which alters all 6 strings, you're changing the tension on your guitar pretty drastically. So, let's tune from E flat standard back up to E standard, which is the normal tuning that we have you tuned to in Rocksmith. Now, while I'm tuning, it's important to know that even though I've already tuned the low E string, which is the red one, changing the other strings below it is still going to affect the tension that the red string is experiencing. And because of that, depending on your instrument or how you've tuned your guitar, it may be wise to go through precision tuning a second time after you've finished it the first time after a big tuning change. So I've just completed tuning to E standard, but I want to make doubly sure I'm in perfect E standard tuning after making a big jump up from E flat standard. So let's hit the button for precision tuner and do it again just to make sure that we're still in tune. As you can see, the low E string was a little bit flat because the tension had been removed as a result of increasing the tension on the strings below it. And that makes sure I'm perfectly in tune. If you ever want to make a slight adjustment, you can use the handy chromatic tuner in the tools menu to do so. It's displayed here right down there at the bottom. So you'll see if I pluck the A string, I'm far off of the A note that I'm supposed to be on for this E standard tuner. And using that chromatic tuner right there, I can just make a quick adjustment and then resume the song and be in tune. So, you've tried all the tuning techniques that we've outlined here in this video and you're still having a hard time passing the tuner. Unfortunately, what that may mean is that your guitar, your instrument itself, is not outputting volume at the level that Rocksmith 2014 needs to perform correctly. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Taylor, Rocksmith 1 works with my guitar just fine. That makes sense, because in Rocksmith 2014, in order to improve the detection and make it more precise, we needed to be more strict about the volume levels that we allow coming into the game. In Rocksmith 1, a low output volume guitar would be gained to a disproportionate level, which tended to throw off the detection quite a bit. In order to prevent that in Rocksmith 2014, we needed to be a little less lenient about the amount of volume we allowed into the game to still have it work. One of the most common problems that can affect the volume level coming out of your guitar is the orientation of the pickups. Now, it's a relatively simple thing to do to adjust these and adjust the volume output coming out of your guitar. However, if you're uncomfortable doing that, you're more than welcome to take your guitar to your local shop and have someone experienced help you out. Lucky for us, our good friend David is here to help us raise our pickups on this guitar. Okay, so now we've calibrated Rocksmith 2014 for David's guitar, which we already know has a problem passing the tuner, as you can see here. Clearly, there isn't enough volume output coming from the guitar to satisfy the needs of the Rocksmith 2014 tuner. So, let's fix that.
Okay, what we've got here is a guitar that ran into problems passing detection. And we noticed that the pickup is actually quite a bit of distance from the strings. There's two screws on either side of the pickup bracket that can be raised or lowered to raise or lower the pickup itself. By raising the pickup, what we're going to do is decrease the distance between the strings and the pickup, allowing it to pick up the vibrations better. Now, it can vary from guitar to guitar how much you should raise it. In this case, we're going to raise it a full 1/4 inch. Be careful turning the screws because you really don't want to strip these guys. Good. Now let's see if we can pass detection. Bam.
Is that also not the bass, though?
That's a guitar, Taylor. You're fired.